students, welcome to Time Online Classes. So this is your first session in biology, right? Yes. So what is biology? Biology is a science of life, okay? It talks about every organism, every creature of God, like animals, plants, microorganisms like bacteria, virus, etc. So biology talks about every creatures of God. Now in the present situation, we could see that the world is looking forward for a vaccine to eradicate the virus COVID-19 from the world, right? Yes. So the present situation or the current situation itself gives us the information about the scope of biology, or it gives us the information about what a biologist could contribute to the world, okay? So biology is that important or that vital in our life. So we must feel very proud in studying biology, okay? Fine. So in this academic year, we are going to deal with what cell is, what tissues are, the diversity of living organisms, etc. So these are the modules which we are going to deal in this academic year. So today in this session, we are going to study the module cell, the fundamental unit of life, okay? And now this module mainly has two subtopics, that is morphology and internal structure of a typical cell. The second subtopic is cell organelles, okay? So students, now we learn what cell is. So what is a cell? A cell, it is the smallest unit of life. So what is a cell? A cell is the smallest unit of life. Any organism, for example plants or animals, any organism, it is made up of smaller or tiny particles called cell. For example, the house we live in. The house we live in is made up of smaller particles called bricks, right? So many bricks join together to form the house we live in. Similarly, many cells join together to form our body, to form the body of an organism. Okay? So what is a cell? A cell is actually the building blocks with which an organism is made. So students, please note down, cell is the building blocks with which an organism is made. Okay? Fine. Now, who discovered cell? Cell, it was discovered by a person called Robert Hooke. So who discovered cell? Cell was discovered by a scientist named Robert Hooke. Now he discovered cell from the slices of cork by using a microscope. He discovered cell from slices of cork by using a microscope. Fine. Now, what is a cork? What do you mean by cork? You know, trees have a bark, isn't it? Yes. So the outer covering of bark of tree is called cork. So what is cork? Cork is the outer covering of the bark of a tree. Okay? Yes. So Robert Hooke, he discovered cells from slices of cork by using a microscope. Now he made slices of cork. He placed the slices of cork under a microscope and he got this kind of an image. And he got this image. This was the image which he has got by placing the slices of cork under microscope. Now look at this image. This image, it looks like a honeycomb, isn't it? Yes. So this image, it resembles a honeycomb. And you know, honeycomb, they have several empty boxes, right? Yes. So honeycomb do have several empty boxes. Similarly, this structure or this image also has many empty boxes. You can see many empty boxes, right? Yes. And all these empty boxes, they represent a cell. So all these empty boxes are each cell. Okay. So this was the image that Robert Hooke observed by using the slices of a cork. Okay. So here he made slices of cork, he placed the slices of cork under a microscope and he got this image, and this image, as you see, it resembles a honeycomb. Now just like honeycomb has several empty boxes, similarly this structure also has several empty boxes and each empty box, it resembles or it represents a cell. Okay? Fine, I think it's clear for you. Okay. Now next is cytology or cell biology. Now what is cytology? In simple terms, cytology is the study of cells. So what is cytology? Cytology is the study of cells. Okay. So it is, the students please note down, cytology, it is the study of cells, its subcellular components and their function. So what is cytology? The study of cells, its subcellular components and their function. Okay. Now what is subcellular components? Subcellular components, those components which are present inside the cell. For example, inside the cell we have a nucleus, we have many organelles, okay. So we'll study in detail the next session. So those study about those components are called study of subcellular components, okay. So those components which are present inside the cell is called a subcellular component, okay. Fine. So what is cytology? Cytology is a study of cell, subcellular components and their function. Okay. So what is cell? Cell is the basic unit of all living organisms, or cell is the basic structural, functional and hereditary unit of all living organisms. I guess it's clear for you. I'll explain once more. Cell as you know, it is the smallest unit of life and it is the building block with which every organism is made. Animals, plants, every organism is made up of tiny units called cell. Now, who discovered cell? Cell was discovered by a person called Robert Hooke. He discovered cell from slices of cork by using a microscope, and when he placed the slices of cork under a microscope, he got a structure which resembles a honeycomb. Okay. Now, just like honeycomb has many empty boxes, the slices of cork also had several empty boxes and each empty box represents a cell. Okay, I think it's clear for you. Okay. Now, next is cytology or cell biology. What is cytology? Cytology is a study of cell, the subcellular components and their function is together called cytology. Okay. Now, cell, it is defined as the basic structural, functional, hereditary unit of all living organisms. Fine. Now next is contributors to study of cell. We know that in the field of cytology, there are several scientists who have helped in the field of cytology or in the study of cell. Now these are some among the scientists who have helped in the study of cell or who have contributed towards the study of cell. Fine. Okay. Now the first person is Zacharias Janssen. Zacharias Janssen in 1590, he invented a microscope. So what did he invent? He invented a microscope. Okay. So we know cell, they are very tiny structure, right? So to study more about cell, we require a microscope. Okay. So this is a very important invention in the study which contributed towards the study of cell. Okay. So Zacharias Janssen in 1590, he invented a microscope. Now the second person is Robert Hooke. Robert Hooke, I have told you earlier, right? Yes. Robert Hooke was the person who discovered cell. So Robert Hooke, he discovered dead cells. The cells discovered by Robert Hooke was dead cells. Okay. So Robert Hooke in 1665, he discovered dead cells. Fine. Now, the next person is Anton von Leeuwenhoek. So Robert Hooke, as I have already told you, Robert Hooke discovered dead cell. So who discovered living cell? Living cell was discovered by a person called Anton von Leeuwenhoek. So who discovered living cell? Living cell was discovered by Anton von Leeuwenhoek. Okay. Now Anton von Leeuwenhoek, he also invented a compound microscope. Okay. So he discovered living cell. He also invented a compound microscope. Okay. Fine. The next scientist is Robert Brown. Robert Brown, he discovered nucleus. Nucleus is a structure which is present inside the cell. We'll deal about it later. Okay. So Robert Brown, he discovered nucleus. Okay. Yes. Next is Johannes Purkinje. Johannes Purkinje, he named protoplasm. That is the fluid, the living matter of the cell is called protoplasm. The fluid inside the cell along with its cell organelles is called protoplasm. Okay. We'll study later. Fine. So Johannes Purkinje, he was the person who named protoplasm. Fine? Okay. Now next is S.J. Singer and G. Nicholson. So S.J. Singer and G. Nicholson, they discovered the fluid mosaic model of plasma membrane. So what is fluid mosaic model? It is nothing but the structure of plasma membrane. Okay. So Singer and Nicholson, they discovered the structure of plasma membrane. Fine? Okay. Next is Camillo Golgi. Camillo Golgi, he discovered Golgi complex. Now what is Golgi complex? It is a cell organelle. So Golgi complex is a cell organelle and it was discovered by Camillo Golgi. Now next is Palade. Palade, he discovered ribosomes. So Palade, he discovered ribosomes. Next is Benda or Carl Benda. Carl Benda. Now Carl Benda, he coined the term mitochondria. Mitochondria is also a cell organelle. Okay, mitochondria is also a cell organelle, and the term mitochondria was coined by Carl Benda. Okay, so this is some among the contributors to the study of cell. So our next topic is cell theory. Okay, now what is cell theory? Cell theory is nothing but some statements or some postulates about the cell which is proposed by some scientist. Okay, so what is cell theory? Cell theory, they are some statements about the cell. They are some statements about the cell. Okay, now it is proposed by two scientists, M.J. Schleiden and Theodor Schwann. Okay, students, please note down. Cell theory was proposed by two scientists, M.J. Schleiden and Theodor Schwann. Fine? Yes. Now, a third scientist named Rudolf Virchow. What was his name? Rudolf Virchow. So, a third scientist named Rudolf Virchow, he modified the cell theory as omnicellular acellular. Okay? Omnicellular acellular. What is omnicellular acellular? It means all cells arise from pre-existing cells. Okay? Omnicellular acellular, it is a Latin phrase. It is a Latin phrase and it means all cells. All cells arise from pre-existing cells. Okay? So students note down, Rudolf Virchow modified the cell theory as omnicellular acellular. And that means all cells arise from pre-existing cells. I think it's clear for you. Fine? Yes. Now we'll move on to the postulates or the statements of modern cell theory. The first postulate is that all organisms are composed of cells. Yes, we know all organisms. Every animals are composed of cells. Every plants are composed of cells. Microorganisms like bacteria, fungi, everything, they are composed of cells. Okay, so the first postulate is all organisms are composed of cells. Fine? Okay. The second postulate is all cells arise from pre-existing cells. What is pre-existing cells? Pre-existing cells means already existing cells. So all cells, they arise from pre-existing cells. For example, consider here we have the, I have given you the image of binary fission or the reproduction of amoeba. I think you have studied about the reproduction of amoeba, right? Yes, amoeba is a single-celled organism and how they reproduce. Here you can see that from a single-celled parent organism, what is formed? Two new daughter organisms are formed, right? So, two new daughter cells arise from the pre-existing parent cell, right? So, new cells are formed from the old cell or new cells are formed from the pre-existing cell. So, that is the second postulate of modern cell theory. That is, all cells arise from pre-existing cells. So, all the new cells formed, they arise from the old or the pre-existing cells. So, that is the postulate. That is the second postulate of modern cell theory. Okay? I think it's clear for you. Fine? Okay. Now, third statement is cell is a structural and functional unit of life. Yes, we have studied. Cell is the basic unit. It is the basic structural and functional unit of life. Fine. Next, fourth statement is every organism starts its life as a single cell. Yes, it's true. We know animals. Animals are formed from a single cell named zygote. Yes, sperm and ovum, they fuse together to form a single cell called zygote. And from this zygote, an animal is formed, or we, human beings, are formed. So, every organism starts its life as a single cell or a zygote. Okay, so that is true. Now, the next postulate is all cells are basically alike in chemical composition and metabolic activities. Okay, so all cells are alike in their structure, in their chemical composition, but the difference is that they perform different kind of functions. Different cells have different function, that's only the difference, but structurally or when we are comparing the chemical composition, all are the same. For example, consider a plant cell. Every plant cells have a cell wall, right? Yes. Now the cell wall is made up of cellulose in every plant cell. So the chemical composition is same in every cell, but they differ only in their functions. Okay. So all cells are basically alike in chemical composition and metabolic activities. Fine. So these are the postulates of modern cell theory. Okay. So modern cell theory, once again, cell theory, it is the statements or it is the postulates about cell which was proposed by some scientists, and the scientists are M.J. Schleiden and Theodor Schwann. And a third scientist named Rudolf Virchow, he modified this cell theory as omnicellula acellula, which means all cells arise from pre-existing cells. Now, the postulates of modern cell theory are all organisms are composed of cells. The second postulate, all cells arise from pre-existing cells. Next is, cells are the basic structural and functional unit of life. Then, every organism starts its life as a single cell. Last is, all cells are basically alike in chemical composition and metabolic activities. Okay, I think it's clear for you, fine? Yes. Now, the next is morphology and internal structure of cell. What do you mean by morphology of cell? Morphology. Morphology, it means the size, shape and structure of cell. So what is morphology? The size, shape and structure of cell is together called morphology. So that is what we deal in morphology. Okay. So morphology is the size, shape and structure of cell. Now, based on the number of cells, we can divide organisms into two. Unicellular organisms and multicellular organisms. Okay. So, what is unicellular organisms? We all know. What is unicellular organisms? Yes. The organisms which is made up of a single cell is called unicellular organisms. Uni means one. So, what is unicellular organisms? Organisms made up of a single cell. Now, for example, amoeba, which we have seen earlier. Amoeba, paramecium are all examples of unicellular organisms. Okay. Now, in a unicellular organism, all the functions of that cell is performed by that single cell. For example, amoeba. Amoeba has a single cell, and with that single cell they engulf the food particle, they digest the food particle, they remove the excretory products, etc. That's all the functions: digestion, excretion, respiration. Every function is done by that single cell. Okay. So, in unicellular organisms, they are made up of a single cell and all the functions are performed by that single cell. Fine? Okay. Now, next is multicellular organisms. What are multicellular organisms? Multi means many. Okay. So, multicellular organisms are those organisms whose body is made up of many cells. So, multicellular organisms, those organisms which are made up of many cells or millions of cells. Okay. Now, for example, a very good example is human body. Human being is a very good example. We are made up of millions of cells. Now, in our case, consider our case, here we have several cells and different cells are there to perform different function, right? Isn't it? Yes. So, for example, for excretion, we have our kidney cells or nephrons. For transmitting messages, we have our neurons. Now, for protection, we have our skin cells or epithelial cells. Okay. So, different cells in a multicellular organism have different functions to perform. Okay. Whereas in case of unicellular organism, that single cell has to perform all the function. Fine. So, that is the difference between a unicellular organism and a multicellular organism. Okay. So, that is morphology. So, morphology is the size, shape and structure of cell. Now, based on number of cells, we have two types of organisms: unicellular organisms and multicellular organisms. Now, unicellular organisms, they are made up of a single cell and that single cell performs all the function. In multicellular organisms, they are made up of millions of cells, and here to perform different function, we have different cells in case of a multicellular organism. Okay, I think it's clear for you. You have been studying this from your earlier classes, right? Yes. Now, so morphology, it is a cell size, shape and structure. So, we first of all study cell size. Okay. Now, in the living world, which is the smallest cell? The smallest cell in living world is Mycoplasma gallisepticum. Mycoplasma gallisepticum, and it is a bacteria. Okay, it is a bacteria, and its size is 0.1 μm. Here, this figure which has a pointer is the smallest cell. It is a Mycoplasma gallisepticum. So, this figure is the Mycoplasma gallisepticum. Okay. Now, the next is largest cell. Which is the largest cell? Ostrich egg. Ostrich egg is the largest cell. It is 18 cm long. So, as you can see in the figure, you can see how large it is, right? Yes. So the largest cell is ostrich egg. Okay. Now the next is longest cell. Which is longest cell? Nerve cell. Nerve cell of giraffe is longest cell. Its axon is 3 meter long. Okay. So which is the longest cell? The nerve cell of giraffe is the longest cell and its axon is 3 meters long. Okay. Here what is the axon? Axon, here in the picture at the bottom, you can see there is a long structure, right? There is a long branch. Okay. So that is what we call an axon. Now it is a part of the nerve cell. This long structure in the nerve cell is what we call axon. Okay. So in case of giraffe, the axon is 3 meter long. So it is the longest cell. Okay. So the smallest cell in living world is Mycoplasma gallisepticum, which is a bacteria. The largest cell is ostrich egg and the longest cell is nerve cell of a giraffe. Fine. Okay. Now next is in case of human body. In case of human body, which is the smallest cell? The smallest cell is sperm. Sperm is the male gamete. Okay. In the figure towards your left, you can see a blue colored spherical structure and also a greenish yellow colored cell. A long greenish yellow colored cell, and this long greenish yellow colored cell is a sperm, which is the smallest cell. Okay. So what is the smallest cell? Which is the smallest cell in human body? In human body, the smallest cell is sperm. Okay. Now, which is the largest cell in human body? It is the ovum or the female gamete. This blue colored spherical structure is the ovum. Okay, so that is the ovum. Now, the next is longest cell. Which is the longest cell? Longest cell in human body is nerve cell. Now here, nerve cell, the axon is 1 meter long. In case of human body, the axon is 1 meter long. Okay. So in human body, smallest cell is sperm, largest cell is ovum, and longest cell is nerve cell. Okay, I think it's clear for you. Fine. So we have been studying the morphology of cell. So what is morphology? The size of cell, shape of cell, and structure of cell. Okay. So we have talked about the size of cell. Next is shape of cell. Okay. So human body have many cells, right? Yes. Human body have many cells and all the cells are of different shape. Now, why are they of different shape? That is because they have different functions to perform. Okay. So the shape of cell, it depends upon the function it performs. So students, please note down, the shape of cell, it is based on the function it performs. The shape of cell, it is based on the function it performs. Okay. Now we have some examples. The first cell is RBC or red blood cell. You know what red blood cell is, right? Yes. So RBC, it is a blood cell. It is a blood cell, and RBC, its main function is transportation of oxygen to different parts of body. Okay, so what is the function of RBC? Transportation of oxygen to different parts of body. And for this, RBC have a biconcave shape. They have a biconcave shape. Here at the figure at the left, you can see RBC, red colored RBC, and they have a biconcave shape. Now what is biconcave shape? It means concave at both the ends. Okay, concave at both the sides. And or it looks like a donut shape. Okay. So RBC, it is a biconcave shaped cell, and it is biconcave because it has to transport gas or it has to transport oxygen, right? Yes. So to transport oxygen, they must have greater surface area, so that only they could transport large amount of oxygen. So since they have a biconcave shape, they have greater surface area, so that they can transport large amount of oxygen. Okay, and also this biconcave shape help them to easily pass through capillaries. Okay, so what is capillary? Capillaries are the blood vessels. They are some blood vessels, a kind of blood vessel. Okay, so capillaries, they are a kind of blood vessel, and since RBC, they have a biconcave shape, they could easily pass through this capillary. Okay, so RBCs are blood cells, they have biconcave shape, and since they have a biconcave shape, they have greater surface area for diffusion of gas, and hence large amount of gases can be transported easily. Okay, and the second reason why they have a biconcave shape is that the biconcave shape helps them to easily pass through the capillaries. Okay, fine. Now the second cell which we are going to discuss is WBC or white blood cells. Okay, white blood cells. These are also a kind of blood cells, and these white blood cells, they do not have a particular shape, or they are irregular in shape. They are irregular in shape. So they do not have a particular shape. Okay. Now, here you can see the 6 white blood cells of human body. Human body do have 6 white blood cells, and the 6 white blood cells can be seen in the figure, and they do not have a particular shape. Now, what is the function of white blood cells? Yeah, white blood cells help in defense. That is, whenever a foreign particle enters our body, this white blood cell goes and destroys the foreign particle. Okay. So white blood cell, they help in what? They help in defense, or they help in destroying the foreign particle entering our body. Okay. Fine. So to destroy the foreign particle, they must move easily, right? They must reach every part of cell, every part of the body. So they must move easily through the body. So white blood cells have an irregular shape so that they can easily squeeze through narrow capillary wall. They can easily squeeze through narrow capillary wall, and they can reach every region of our body or every site of injury, and they could do their function, that is defense. Okay. So white blood cells, they have an irregular shape, or they do not have a particular shape, and since they do not have a particular shape, they could easily squeeze through narrow capillary wall, and they could easily move to site of injury, and they could perform their function, that is defense, or they could kill the foreign particles which have entered the body. Okay, I think it's clear. Fine. Now next is nerve cell. Nerve cell we have seen in the previous slide, right? Nerve cell, they have a long and branched structure, right? They have a long and branched structure. Now what is the function of nerve cell? Nerve cell help in conducting, or they help in transporting messages from one region of our body to the other region of our body. So since they have to transport message, they have a very elongated as well as a branched structure. Okay, so nerve cells, they have a long and they have a branched structure, and this helps them in conducting the impulses from one region of body to the other region. Okay, fine. Now the next cell is muscle cell. Okay, muscle cell, they are elongated and contractile. Here in the figure at the left, you can see 3 muscle cells: skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle. Okay, so muscle cells, they are elongated and they are contractile. Here you can see they are elongated and also they are contractile. What is the function of muscle cells, or what is the function of muscle? Here the function of muscle is movement. Without muscles we could not move. So muscles helps in movement. So since they help in movement, how does the muscle help in movement? By relaxation and contraction. So by relaxation and contraction, the muscle helps in movement. Since they help in movement, the muscle has an elongated and a contractile shape. Fine. Okay. Now the next is conducting cells in plants. Conducting cells in plants are xylem and phloem. They are xylem and phloem. Now xylem and phloem, as you can see here, they are elongated as well as they are tubular. Okay, so xylem and phloem are elongated and tubular. And what is their function? They help in transportation of water and minerals in plants. Okay, so xylem and phloem, they are elongated and they are tubular, and this helps them in transportation of water and minerals in plants. Okay, I think it's clear. Fine. Next is bacterial cells. Bacteria mainly exist in 4 shapes, that is rod shape, coma shape, spherical shape, and spiral shape. Look at the pointer please. Rod shaped bacteria. Here at the pointer you can see rod shaped bacteria, and it is called bacilli. Rod shaped bacteria is called bacilli. Okay, and here at the pointer, look at the pointer. Here you can see the comma shaped bacteria. Comma shaped bacteria are called vibrio. They are called vibrio. Okay. Now look here. Look at here. Look at the pointer please. Here you can see spherical shaped bacteria. Spherical shaped bacteria. It is called cocci. Spherical shaped bacteria is called cocci. Okay. And here you can see spiral shaped bacteria. Spiral shaped bacteria is called spirale. Spiral shaped is called spirale. Okay. So bacterial cells exist in 4 shapes. Rod shaped is called bacilli. Comma shaped is called vibrio. Spherical shaped is called cocci, and spiral shaped is called spirale. Okay, so it's clear. So cell shape is clear. So we have studied cell size and cell shape. Next is cell structure. Okay, so here we are going to study physical structure of a cell. We know different cells perform different function and hence they have different shape. But all the cells will have certain features, some features in common. And now we are going to study those features which are common in a cell. Okay. So the first common feature in a cell is membrane. Membrane. So what is membrane? Membrane is the outer covering of a cell. Okay. So the outer covering of a cell is what we call membrane. And this membrane, it gives shape to the cell. Yes, it is the outer covering. It helps in protection. It gives shape to the cell. Okay. Now we have animal cells and we have plant cells. Now in case of animal cells, there is only a single membrane, that is the plasma membrane or the cell membrane. Okay. So animal cell, there is only a single membrane, that is plasma membrane or cell membrane. Okay. Now in plant cells have an additional membrane too. Plant cells have two membranes. That is, they have an inner plasma membrane and they have an outer cell wall. Okay. So plant cells have two membranes, an inner plasma membrane and an outer cell wall. Here in the figure, this is a plant cell. Okay. Here you can see there is an outer cell wall. Look at the pointer, please. Here you can see an outer cell wall. And inner to cell wall, you can see a cell membrane. Okay. So there is an outer cell wall and there is an inner cell membrane. Okay. Now, why do plants have a cell wall? What is the purpose? Plants do have an extra membrane. Why do they have an extra membrane? That's because we are animals. Okay. We could move. We have the capacity to move, right? But plants, could they move? No, plants could not move. They are rooted, right? They could not move. They are rooted to the land or to the ground. So, when there is a harsh climatic condition, like when there is a heavy rainfall, when there is a storm, what do we do? What do we animals do? We would run away. We would run away to a safe place, right? But plants, they do not have that option. They could not run away. So plants should stand there and should overcome these harsh climatic conditions. Plants do not have an option to run away from harsh climatic conditions. So since they do not have that kind of an option, they need more protection to tide over this harmful climatic condition. Okay. So since they could not move, the plants have to stand there and they have to overcome this climatic condition, and hence they must need extra protection, and that is the reason why plants do have two cell membranes whereas animals have only a single membrane. Okay. Is that clear for you? So membrane is the outer covering of cell. Animals have a single membrane called plasma membrane, whereas plants have two membranes, that is plasma membrane and a cell wall. Okay. Fine. Now, next is protoplasm. So we have learned this name earlier, right? Protoplasm. Who invented the term protoplasm? Yeah, it was Johannes Purkinje who invented the term protoplasm. Okay, so what is protoplasm? Protoplasm, it is the living matter of cell, or the particle, the content inside the plasma membrane is called protoplasm. Here you can see this content inside the plasma membrane. This whole content is called the protoplasm. Okay. So the whole content inside the plasma membrane is called the protoplasm. Okay. Yes. Now, protoplasm, it consists of mainly two things. One is nucleus and the other is the cytoplasm. Nucleus and cytoplasm. We'll learn later. Okay. So protoplasm has two particles mainly, nucleus and cytoplasm. Okay. Fine. Now, what is nucleus? The third thing in the third structure inside a cell is nucleus. What is nucleus? Nucleus is a controlling center of cell. Here you can see the purple colored structure. Look at the pointer, please. Here you can see the purple colored structure. This purple colored structure is called nucleus. And nucleus is a controlling center of the cell. They control every activity of the cell. They control every function of the cell. Okay. So what is nucleus? Nucleus is a controlling center of a cell. Now this is a plant cell. In a plant cell, the nucleus lies towards the periphery or towards the side. Right? Yes. Whereas in case of an animal cell, the nucleus lies towards the center. Okay. This is an animal cell. In this animal cell, you can see the nucleus, it lies towards the center. This purple colored portion is nucleus, and here nucleus lies towards the center. Whereas in case of a plant cell, the nucleus lies towards the periphery. Okay? Okay, so that's clear. Now, the next is cytoplasm. So protoplasm is made up of nucleus as well as cytoplasm. Now what is cytoplasm? Cytoplasm is the jelly-like substance. Cytoplasm is protoplasm except nucleus. Protoplasm without a nucleus is called cytoplasm. So the jelly-like substance inside the cell is called cytoplasm. So what is cytoplasm? It is the jelly-like substance inside the cell. Fine? Yes. Now you can see this jelly-like substance inside the cell has many substances. Like here you have a spherical structure, here you have very elongated structure, and many other structures are present inside cytoplasm. And these structures are cell organelles and cytoplasmic inclusions. So the different structures which are present inside the cytoplasm are cell organelles and cytoplasmic inclusions. Okay. So here inside the plasma membrane we have the cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is a jelly-like substance, and cytoplasm has cell organelles and cytoplasmic inclusions. So I think it's clear for you. Fine. The next is cell organelles. Okay. So a cell has to perform many functions, right? A cell has to produce energy. A cell has to store many substances. A cell has to transport substances from that cell to the other cell, right? So a cell has to perform many functions. Now, for example, consider the cell as a school. Okay, consider the cell as a school. In school, we have a principal, and let the principal be the nucleus. Okay, so the principal represents the nucleus. So consider cell as a school, and in school we have a head who is a controlling center, and this controlling center is the principal, and in cell the controlling center is nucleus. Okay, now the principal cannot function the school alone, right? She could not function the school alone. She requires many faculties for functioning the school, right? She requires a faculty. She requires a teacher to teach science. She requires a teacher to teach social science. A teacher to teach maths. Okay, she requires teachers to teach different subjects, or she requires faculties to perform different functions. Similarly, the cell, it requires what? It requires different organelles to perform different function. Okay. For example, they require an organelle called mitochondria for energy production. They require an organelle called vacuole to produce for storage of substance. They require an organelle called Golgi complex to pack certain materials to be transported. Okay. So that is how we can correlate between a school and a cell organelle. So here consider the cell as a school. Okay, in school we have a head called the principal. In cell we have a head that is a nucleus, and principal could not function alone. Similarly, nucleus could not function alone. They require help. So principal, they recruit faculties. So nucleus have many cell organelles to perform different functions. So principal has different faculties to perform different function, and nucleus has many cell organelles to perform different function. Okay. So what are cell organelles? Cell organelles, they are tiny substances present inside the cytoplasm which are required to perform different functions inside the cell. Okay. I think it's clear for you. Okay. So cell organelle, they are tiny membrane bound structures. Cell organelles do have a membrane or an outer covering. Okay. Cell organelles are tiny membrane bound structure, and they help in what? They help in performing specific function inside a cell. Okay. Now cell organelles are living material. They are living material. Fine. I think it's clear for you. Fine. Okay. So that was cell organelle. Now next is cytoplasmic inclusions. Cytoplasmic inclusions are also substances present inside cytoplasm. Cytoplasmic inclusions are also substances present inside cytoplasm, and these substances, we have seen cell organelles. Cell organelles were living structures, right? Yes. Similarly, cytoplasm, they are non-living structures. Cell organelles were living structures present inside cytoplasm, and cytoplasmic inclusions are non-living structures present inside cytoplasm. Okay. Now, cell organelles were membrane bound, whereas cytoplasmic inclusions are not membrane bound. Okay. Cytoplasmic inclusions are not membrane bound. Fine. Now, cell organelles, they carry specific functions. Now, cytoplasmic inclusions, they do not take up different functions. they help in storage of substance. For example, they storage phosphate, sulfate, etc. Okay, so cell organelles, they help in storage of substances. Fine, is it clear for you? Okay, so here we were talking about cytoplasmic inclusions. They are non-living substance present inside cytoplasm. Then they are not membrane bound. Then they do not carry any metabolic activity. They help in storage of particular substances. Okay. So plasma membrane is also called cell membrane. Okay. So what is plasma membrane? Plasma membrane is the outer covering of a cell. So the outer covering of cell is what we call plasma membrane, and inside the plasma membrane or plasma membrane encloses the cytoplasm and the nucleus. So students, please note down, plasma membrane is the outer covering of the cell. So plasma membrane is the outer covering of the cell. Okay. Now plasma membrane, it is living and it is semi-permeable membrane. Okay. So what is semi-permeable? It is selectively permeable. Please note down students, semi-permeable membrane. Plasma membrane is a semi-permeable membrane. Okay. So semi-permeable means selectively permeable. That means it allows only certain substance to enter the cell. Okay. So this plasma membrane is actually a barrier for substance to enter the cell. Right? Yes. So if substance wants to enter the cell, it must cross the plasma membrane. Right? Yes. So does all the substance need to be transported into the cell? No. Only required substances need to be transported into cell. For example, any foreign substance or any poisonous substance need not be transported into cell. If it is transported into cell, it would destroy the cell, right? Yes. So only required substances have to be transported into cell. So plasma membrane, they select certain substance and they transport only the selected substance into the cell. Okay, so plasma membrane, it does not transport every substance into cell. It only transports the required substance or the selected substance into the cell. Okay, and hence we call the plasma membrane as semi-permeable or selectively permeable. Okay, I think it's clear for you. Okay, now this plasma membrane, it is also elastic and delicate, and also it is flexible. I have already told you that membranes protect the cell, also it gives shape to the cell. So for giving the shape to cell, it must be elastic, it must be flexible, also it must be delicate. So plasma membrane is elastic, flexible as well as it is delicate. Okay. Now plasma membrane is made up of lipids as well as proteins. So it is made up of lipids. Lipids means fats, fat. Okay. So lipid is fat. So plasma membrane is made up of lipid and protein. Okay. So at the bottom you can see the structure of a plasma membrane, and here look at the pointer please. The blue colored structures, these blue colored structures are the proteins. Okay, and the rest of the structures, look at the pointer, the rest of the structures are the lipids. So plasma membrane is composed of protein and lipids. Okay, fine. Okay. So here we were talking about plasma membrane, which is the outer covering of a cell, and it encloses the cytoplasm and the nucleus. And plasma membrane is semi-permeable membrane, or it is selectively permeable. It allows only required substance to enter the cell. Okay, and this is made up of lipids and proteins. Okay, fine. Next is the functions of plasma membrane. Okay. Plasma membrane, as I have already told you, they give shape to the cell. Okay, so they give shape to the cell. Students, please note down, it gives shape to the cell. Then the second point is it is a mechanical barrier. It acts as a mechanical barrier. Yes, it is a barrier, right? It allows only the required or the needed substance to enter the cell. So this acts as a mechanical barrier. Okay, so plasma membrane gives shape to the cell. It acts as a mechanical barrier. The third point is it protects the cell from injury. Yes, it is actually a covering, so it protects the cell from injury. Now the fourth point is it helps in movement of various materials into and out of the cell. Yes, we have already told you, I have already told, right? It is a mechanical barrier. It allows only certain substances to move into the cell and certain substances like waste materials to move out of the cell. Okay, so plasma membrane, it helps in the movement of certain substances into the cell and out of the cell. Okay, fine. The last point is it maintains homeostasis. What is homeostasis? Homeostasis means a constant environment inside the cell. So it maintains a homeostasis inside the cell, or it maintains a constant environment inside the cell. That is, it allows only required substance to enter the cell. It does not allow every substance to enter the cell. It allows only required substance to enter the cell, and hence it maintains a constant environment inside the cell, or it maintains homeostasis inside the cell. Okay? So, what were the functions of plasma membrane? It gives shape to the cell, then it acts as a mechanical barrier, then it protects the cell from injury, then it helps in movement of substances into and out of the cell. Finally, it maintains homeostasis. Homeostasis is a constant environment inside the cell. Okay, so it helps in maintaining homeostasis inside the cell. Fine? I think it's clear for you. Fine. Okay. Now, next is transportation of substance through plasma membrane. So, I have told you plasma membrane helps in transportation of selected substances into and out of the cell. Okay. Now, substances are transported in the plasma membrane by three ways. That is passive transport, active transport and bulk transport. So, three methods of transportation of substances across the plasma membrane are passive transport, active transport and finally bulk transport. Okay. So, here you can see the pictures, the figures of active transport as well as passive transport. So, we will discuss about it in detail. Okay. So, the next portion is passive transport. What is transport? What do you mean by transport? Transport, it means the movement of substance from one place to another. Right? Movement from one place to another is what we call transport. Now, passive transport, it is the movement of substance from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration. Students, please note down. Passive transport, it is the movement of substance from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration. Okay, I'll make it clear for you. Look at the figure below. At the left figure below, you can see, look at the pointer please. You can see purple circles, right? Purple circles. These are the substance to be transported. And at the middle we have a cell membrane. Okay, and here at the left portion you can see that there are large number of purple substances, right? So the concentration of substance at this portion is high. Look at the pointer please. The concentration of substance at this particular point is high. Whereas concentration of the substance at this point, look at the pointer, at this point is low, right? Yes. So substance move from a higher concentration to the lower concentration. Okay, so please look at the figure, please look at the pointer. So substance here moves from higher concentration to lower concentration. So that is passive transport. Okay, so what is passive transport? The movement of substance from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration is called passive transport. Okay, now passive transport, this does not require energy. So this takes place without the expenditure of energy. Students, please note down, passive transport, it takes place without the expenditure of energy, or passive transport, it does not require energy. Okay, fine. Now, there are two types of passive transport, that is diffusion and osmosis. So, what are the two types of passive transport? Diffusion and osmosis. In simple words, diffusion is a movement of air and osmosis is a movement of water. Okay, diffusion is a transport of air and osmosis is a transport of water. Okay, so we were talking about passive transport. Passive transport is the movement of substance or movement of molecules from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration. And this movement, it does not require energy. Okay, now this takes place by two methods, or there are two kinds of passive transport, that is diffusion and osmosis. I think it's clear for you, fine? Okay. Now next is diffusion. So what is diffusion? Diffusion, it is a movement of molecules from higher concentration to lower concentration till the concentrations become equal. particularly saying it is a movement of gaseous substance or it is a movement of gases. Okay, so here at the figure at the left portion, you can see diffusion, right? Look at the pointer. Look at the pointer, please. You can see diffusion, right? So here diffusion, the air molecules move from higher concentration to a region of lower concentration. And this movement stops when the concentration becomes equal on both the sides. Okay. So what is diffusion? Diffusion is a movement of molecules, particularly saying air molecules. So diffusion is, students please note down, diffusion is the movement of air molecules from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration till the concentration become equal on both the sides. Okay, is it clear for you? Fine. Okay. Now we'll move on to the example. We'll have an example of diffusion. The first example is taking enough carbon dioxide from the air and release of oxygen into the air by plants during photosynthesis. So I think you all are familiar with the process of photosynthesis, right? Yes, here at the figure above, at the picture above, you can see that's a figure of photosynthesis, and here you can see the concentration of carbon dioxide. Look at the pointer, please. The concentration of carbon dioxide is higher at the environment and it is lower at the plant. Okay, so concentration of carbon dioxide is initially higher at the environment and it is lower at the plant. So this carbon dioxide, it moves from the environment to the plant, or carbon dioxide moves or diffuses from higher concentration to lower concentration. Okay, fine. Now with this carbon dioxide, with the carbon dioxide which has entered the plant uses this carbon dioxide to produce oxygen. Okay, so now the amount of oxygen in the plant is higher and the amount of oxygen at the atmosphere is comparatively lower. So what happens? Oxygen diffuses from higher concentration, that is from plant, to lower concentration, that is to environment. Okay, so oxygen, it diffuses from higher concentration, plant, to lower concentration, that is environment. Okay, so that's an example of what? Example of diffusion. So what is an example of diffusion? That is the movement of, yes, the taking in of carbon dioxide from air, or the movement of carbon dioxide from the air and the release of oxygen into the air by plant during photosynthesis is an example of what? It is an example of diffusion. Okay, so once again I'll explain. Initially the carbon dioxide concentration is higher at the environment and the carbon dioxide concentration is lower at the plant. So carbon dioxide starts to move from high concentration, that is environment, to low concentration, that is to plant. Okay, now this plant utilizes this carbon dioxide to produce what? To produce oxygen and to produce food. Now the concentration of oxygen is higher in the plant and the concentration of oxygen is lower at the atmosphere. So what happens? Oxygen moves from higher concentration, that is from plants, to lower concentration, that is to the environment. So that is the example. So here, what is the example? Taking enough carbon dioxide from air. That is, the plant takes in carbon dioxide from air and the plant releases the oxygen into the air during photosynthesis. Okay, so that is an example. Fine, I think it's clear for you. Okay, fine. Now, the second example is taking enough oxygen into the blood from the lungs and the release of carbon dioxide from the tissue into the blood during respiration. Okay, I think respiration is also familiar to you. So, the second picture, the picture below shows the respiration. The picture below shows alveoli. Alveoli is a part of lungs. Okay, so consider it as lungs. Okay, so here alveoli, and then you can see the surrounding blood capillary in which the blood flows. So here we have the alveoli or the lungs and the surrounding blood capillary through which the blood flows. So initially when we breathe in air, the concentration of oxygen, look at the pointer please, look at the pointer. The concentration of oxygen inside the lungs or inside the alveoli is more and the concentration of oxygen in the blood is less. Okay, so what happens? Oxygen moves from lungs or alveolus into blood. Okay, so initially when we breathe in air, the concentration of oxygen in the alveoli is more and the concentration of oxygen in the blood capillary is less. So what happens? Oxygen moves from higher concentration, that is from lungs, to lower concentration, that is to blood. Okay, so that was the first portion. Taking enough oxygen into the blood from the lungs and release of carbon dioxide from tissue into the blood. Okay. So now what happens is that this oxygen travels and this oxygen reaches the tissue. Okay. Now when this oxygen reaches the tissue, this tissue uses oxygen for respiration. And they produce what they produce? Carbon dioxide. Okay. So this tissue or the cell uses this oxygen for respiration and produce large amount of carbon dioxide. So at the present time, the amount of carbon dioxide in the tissue is more and the amount of carbon dioxide in the blood is less. So what happens? The carbon dioxide starts to move from the tissue to the blood because the amount of carbon dioxide in tissue is more and the amount of carbon dioxide in the blood is less. So what happens? Carbon dioxide starts to move from the tissue to the blood. Okay, so that is also an example of diffusion. Okay. So students, the next portion is osmosis. Okay, so we have been discussing passive transport. Okay, of passive transport is of two types, diffusion and osmosis. Okay, so second is osmosis. So what is osmosis? Osmosis is a movement of solvent or water molecules from a region of higher water concentration to a region of lower water concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. Okay. So students, please note down what is osmosis. Osmosis is a movement of water molecules from higher concentration to lower concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. Once again, what is osmosis? Osmosis is a movement of water molecules from higher concentration to lower concentration through semi-permeable membrane. Okay, so look at the figure. Look at the figure at the left portion. Here you can see the figure of osmosis and look at the pointer. Look at the pointer, please. Here you have higher water concentration. The pointer is at the higher water concentration. Okay. And at this portion you have lower water concentration. You have only very less water molecules at this portion. Whereas at this portion you have higher water concentration. High water concentration is present. So what happens? Water starts to move from higher water concentration or this region to lower water concentration. Okay. Through a semi-permeable membrane. In between there is a semi-permeable membrane. Okay. So that is osmosis. So what is osmosis? It is the movement of water from higher water concentration to lower water concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. Okay, fine. So I think it's clear for you. Now osmosis and diffusion all are the same, but there are only a few differences. In diffusion, air molecule, diffusion is the movement of air molecule and osmosis is the movement of water molecule. And in diffusion there is no semi-permeable membrane in between, whereas in osmosis there is a semi-permeable membrane in between. Okay, fine. Now we'll discuss about the three types of solution. The three types of solution are hypertonic solution, hypotonic solution and isotonic solution. Okay, so three solutions are hypertonic, hypotonic and isotonic. Now what is hypertonic solution? Hypertonic solution, that is solution of lower water concentration. Look at the figure, look at the pointer, look at the pointer. Here where I have look at the pointer, where I have pointed is hypertonic solution. Look at the hypertonic solution here. The blue colored spherical structures are water molecule and the yellow colored spherical structures are salt molecule. Okay, look at the figure, look in the figure at the middle, in the figure at the middle you can see the water molecules are less when compared to solute molecules, right? Yes. So at the figure in the figure at the middle, the water concentration is less when compared to solute concentration, right? Yes. So that is hypertonic solution. So what is hypertonic solution? A solution having low water concentration is called hypertonic solution. Okay? Yes. Now next is hypotonic solution. Look at the pointer. At the pointer I am pointing the hypotonic solution. Here look, the number of water molecule, that is the number of blue colored spheres are more when compared to the number of solute molecule. Right, yes. So here in this figure, the number of water molecules are more, or the concentration of water is more when compared to concentration of solute molecules. So this is a hypotonic solution. So what is a hypotonic solution? In hypotonic solution, the water concentration is more and solute concentration is less. Okay. Now next is isotonic solution. Look at the pointer. At the pointer I am pointing the isotonic solution. In isotonic solution, the water molecules as well as the salt molecules are almost equal. The number of water molecules and salt molecules are almost equal. Or we can say the water concentration and the salt concentration are almost the same in isotonic solution. Okay, so that is isotonic solution. Fine. So the three solutions are hypertonic. Hypertonic, that is the water concentration is less. Hypotonic, that is water concentration is more, and isotonic, that is water concentration and solute concentration are equal. Okay, fine. So next is, what happens to a cell when it is placed in a hypertonic solution? Okay, so look at the figure. At the first figure, at the center you have the cell. At the center there is an orange colored bordered cell, right? At the center you have the cell, and then you have the surrounding environment, the surrounding water, and this cell is placed in a hypertonic solution. So look here, look at this figure, look at the figure to the left side. There you can see that the outer portion has less water molecule. Water molecules are denoted by blue colored spheres. Okay, so here water molecules are denoted by blue colored spheres. So here, look at this figure to the left. You can see outside there is less water molecule, whereas inside the cell there is more water molecule. Okay, so this is a hypertonic solution. So in hypertonic solution, water concentration would be less. So in the solution or in the external environment, water concentration is less, and inside the cell water concentration is more. So what happens? Water starts to move from inside the cell to outside the cell, or water starts to move from higher concentration to lower concentration. Okay, so what happens? Water starts to move from inside the cell to outside the cell, and this is called plasmolysis. So what is this is called exosmosis. So what is exosmosis? Movement of water from the cell towards the external environment is called exosmosis. So students note down, during hypertonic, when cell is placed in hypertonic solution, what happens? The first thing which happens is exosmosis. What happens? Exosmosis. Okay, fine. And also plasmolysis take place. What is plasmolysis? It is the shrinking of protoplasm away from cell wall, or it is actually the shrinking of cell. The cell shrink. That is because what happens? That is because all the water inside the cell moves to the solution. So what happened finally? Finally the cell shrink. So that is what happens in a hypertonic solution. Okay, so when cell is placed in a hypertonic solution, cell has more water and external environment has less water. So water starts to move from the inner portion of cell to the external environment, and that is called exosmosis. And finally what happens? The cell shrink. Okay, fine. Now when cell is placed in a hypotonic solution, what is hypotonic solution? Look at the figure, look at the pointer please. In a hypotonic solution means a solution having high water concentration. So here the external environment will have high water concentration, and inside the cell there is low water concentration. Okay, so what happens? Water starts to move from external environment into the cell. So water starts to move from the external environment into the cell. So that is hypotonic solution. So what is hypotonic solution? Hypotonic solution is a solution where water concentration is very higher, and here when a cell is placed in this kind of a solution, water starts to move from the external environment or from the solution to the cell. So what happens? Cell starts to swell. Okay, so please note down students, when cell is placed in a hypotonic solution, endosmosis take place. What happens? Endosmosis, that is the movement of water into the cell take place, and hence what happens? The cell starts to swell. Okay, cell starts to swell. Okay, Also, imbibition take place. What is imbibition? Imbibition is nothing but adsorption of water by solid substances. That is the adsorption of water by any solid substance. For example, seeds. Seed during germination, they undergo imbibition. Seeds absorb water from external surface. That is imbibition. That is nothing. Okay. That is nothing but adsorption of water by solid substance. Okay. So when cell is placed in a hypotonic solution, water moves into the cell or endosmosis take place, and what happens? The cell finally swells. Okay. Now the third condition is when a cell is placed in isotonic solution. What is isotonic solution? Isotonic solution, there the water concentration as well as the salt concentration will be the same. So in the solution and also inside the cell, the water concentration and salt concentration remains the same. So water does not move out and water does not move into the cell, and hence the cell remains in the perfect shape or in the original shape. Okay, so water movement does not take place, or osmosis does not take place. Okay, so cell in a hypertonic solution undergo exosmosis and cell shrink. In a hypotonic solution, cell undergo endosmosis and it swells. In an isotonic solution, there is no osmosis taking place and cell is in the original shape itself. Okay, fine. Now, the next portion is active transport. Okay, now what is active transport? Active transport, it is the movement of ions or electrolytes from lower concentration to higher concentration. What was passive transport? Passive transport was movement of substance from higher concentration to lower concentration. But here, the movement of substance take place from, look at the figure at the bottom, the movement of substance take place from lower concentration to higher concentration. So movement of substance take place from lower concentration to higher concentration. And for this kind of a movement, energy is required or ATP is required. Look at the pointer, there is an ATP. So ATP or energy is required for this kind of a movement. Okay, a very good example is movement of ions into the cell or out of the cell. Okay, so students, please note down what is active transport. Active transport is the movement of ions and electrolytes from lower concentration to higher concentration. And this active transport uses what? Uses energy. So active transport uses energy. Okay, fine. Now, the next is bulk transport. Bulk transport, it is the movement of macromolecules. It is a movement of larger substances. So earlier we were talking about smaller molecules, but here in bulk transport, it is the movement of macromolecule or larger substance like proteins, polysaccharides, etc., which can be only passed by rupturing the plasma membrane or by breaking the plasma membrane. So what is bulk transport? Bulk transport is a movement of macromolecules or larger substance like proteins, polysaccharides, etc., which can pass through only rupturing the plasma membrane or only by breaking the plasma membrane. Okay, and this kind of bulk transport also uses energy. So this transport also uses energy. So once again, students, please note down what is bulk transport. Bulk transport is the movement of macromolecules. Movement of macromolecules is called bulk transport. Okay, and please note down, students, this bulk transport also uses energy. It also uses energy. Okay. Now, the bulk transport are of two types, exocytosis and endocytosis. Okay. It is of two types, that is exocytosis and endocytosis. Okay. So, first is exocytosis. So, in exocytosis, here materials move from inside to outside the cell. So, in exocytosis, what happens? Materials move from inside to outside the cell. In the figure, you can see that there are certain materials and materials are present in vesicles, and materials in this vesicle move from inside the cell to outside the cell. So, a very good example can be the release of secretory materials, excretory materials from the cell. Okay. So, those excretory materials present in the cell, they are embedded inside a vesicle, and this vesicle joins to the plasma membrane. This vesicle joins to plasma membrane, and finally it is released out of the cell. Okay. So, I think you have seen the excretory process in amoeba. This is just similar to excretory process in amoeba. Okay. So, what is exocytosis? It is the movement of materials from inside the cell to outside the cell. A very good example is release of secretory and excretory materials from the cell. So here excretory material is present inside a vesicle. It joins with plasma membrane and finally releases these materials. Okay. So an example is the release of proteins and other materials formed in the cell. So students, please note down the first type of bulk transport is exocytosis. And exocytosis, here it is the movement of materials from inside the cell to outside the cell. Okay, fine. Now the next is endocytosis. What is endocytosis? Endocytosis is just the opposite of exocytosis. It is the movement of materials from outside the cell to the inside by engulfing. That is, amoeba engulfs the food matter. You know, you have studied that how amoeba engulfs the food matter. So that is an example of endocytosis. So here, what is endocytosis? Endocytosis, that is materials move from outside the cell to inside by engulfing. So here, the materials move from outside the cell and finally plasma membrane forms a vesicle here. Look at the figure. Plasma membrane forms a vesicle and this vesicle moves into the cell. Okay, so that is endocytosis. Now, engulfing of foreign substances, dead cells and pathogen is called phagocytosis. So, phagocytosis is also a kind of endocytosis and phagocytosis helps in defense. So, they engulf the foreign substance, the dead cells, the pathogens and finally they destroy these engulfed substances. So, that is what we call phagocytosis. Okay. So, we were talking about endocytosis. So, students, please note down endocytosis. It is the movement of materials from outside the cell to inside by engulfing. Okay, by engulfing. That is called endocytosis. And phagocytosis is also a part of endocytosis or a type of endocytosis. And here, what is engulfed in case of phagocytosis? Foreign substances, dead cells, pathogens, etc. are engulfed. Okay, I think it's clear for you. Fine. Okay. So here we were discussing about the passive transportation. Now, transportation can be of three types: passive transport, active transport, bulk transport. Passive transport, that is without energy, from higher concentration to lower concentration. And it is of two types: diffusion, that is transportation of air molecule, and osmosis, transportation of water molecules. And here we have seen hypertonic, isotonic and hypotonic solution. Now next was active transport. Active transport is transport of substance from a region of lower concentration to higher concentration, and it uses what? It uses energy. Okay. Now the next is bulk transport. Bulk transport is nothing but the transport of macromolecules or larger substances. It can be of two types: exocytosis and endocytosis. Okay. What is exocytosis? Exocytosis is movement of substances from the cell to the outside. From the cell to the outside is called exocytosis. Now what is endocytosis? Movement of substances from the external environment into the cell is called endocytosis. Okay. So students, I will summarize. We were talking about cell. Cell is a building block of an organism, and we have discussed about the contributors to the study of cell. Then we have discussed about the different types of cell. Then the shape of cell, the size of cell, the structure of cell, the important components of cell. Cell do have a membrane, they have a protoplasm, they have a cytoplasm, they have a nucleus, they have a cell organelles, they have the cytoplasmic inclusions. Okay, so we were discussing about different structures of the cell. And then we discussed in detail the membranes of the cell, that is the plasma membrane. And then we have finally discussed the three types of transport and their division. So this was what we have discussed in the session. So I think you have understood the session, you have enjoyed the session. So thank you, students.